What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the debut album by Charlie Puth. Basically, this project is called 9 Track Mind, and it came out in the winter of 2016. Now, the thing about this particular project is it kind of, I feel like this is a seminal R&B album from like the mid-late 2010s as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Once you get past like the eras of like T-Pain and Trey Songz, Usher, some of those type folks like The Weeknd and Drake, some of those R&B type folks. Once you start getting to like 2015, 2016, 2017, it's like the mid 2010s started to happen. Folks like SZA and some of those type folks started to happen with R&B and stuff. I kind of feel like my territory as far as knowing about more hit R&B type albums is a little less. I feel like somewhat my knowledge of like seminal R&B projects after like 2016 or so has kind of been marginalized, I'd have to suppose. But I do remember this particular project. I was going to review this on Acid Roots back in 2016, 2017. I had gotten it from the library and was going to put it on my computer. I had gotten it from the library and I was going to put it on my computer and such, but I just got sidetracked and then just never did it back in those days. But I'd have to say, I do remember that album from back in the day. I wanted to get towards it just because I remember Charlie Puth. He was kind of popular in 2015, 2016. This album is particularly pretty large. Like I was saying, this is a seminal kind of R&B album. Despite the fact that it's not a full-blown classic, I still feel like it was a big deal back in 2016, 2017, 2015. Also, because of which the huge song "See You Again," which was a pretty huge smash. That song probably has over 1 billion plays on Spotify, stuff like that. Has over 1 billion hits on YouTube. Some of those type pitches. Some of those type pitches. It was a big deal back in 2015. A tribute to Paul Walker and folks like that. As far as that particular kind of happened, so that was a big deal. I wanted to check out this particular album because I thought it was a new R&B type cat. Wanted to see what he was about. And it's a pretty dope project here, but I definitely have to recommend getting the deluxe. I mean, nowadays, now that it's been 8 years, I'd have to say it's a pretty simple concept to get the deluxe. But back in the day, if you do only get like the regular version, it's a little bit more haphazard, doesn't quite have as much quality on here. I mean, it does have 4 singles, which were a big deal throughout the charts as far as that pitch kind of happens with it, but it's just not as much of a smash compared to like the deluxe edition, which really bolsters this particular project. It's not a full-blown stark difference, but it's enough of a stark difference so you'll see in the score that I give this particular project when I review the deluxe edition, score the normal version. It's just kind of the thing about it. But yeah, this is a big deal in R&B around the 2010s. Definitely a pretty seminal type one. Had a lot of good stuff on here. Had some charting singles. He managed to snag some really popular people around this particular time, like Megan Trainor and Selena Gomez, who are on complete white hot fire as far as that pitch kind of happens with it in 2015. As far as that pitch kind of went with it, just would have to say this project was kind of heralded in like certain senses. This kind of concept. I mean, I did purchase Charlie Puth's 2018 album, which I think is called Voice Notes or something like that. I'm eventually going to get to that project. That has a little bit more liveliness about it. The one thing about this particular project that you'll probably notice, apart from like the deluxe songs on here, there's not a ton of real turn up type songs and overall social kind of outing type songs. I think apart from like the song with Selena Gomez, which is just basically like a mid-pace kind of pep, which is We Don't Talk Anymore. For the most part, this is a pretty sleepy and overall drowsy album, and it's pretty coded and makeshift, I'd have to say. So this would definitely be like your loud pack for R&B if you're looking for some 2010s type makeshift. This for something circa 2016, 2017, as far as those particular pitches kind of happen with it. But I would just have to say is it's kind of the concept that there's not a ton of liveliness on here, not a ton of dance songs, drinking songs, kind of more dance heavy type records, just with something to really get women twerking, some stuff like that. Just really get the hypeness kind of crazy. In a lot of sense, I feel like this is more of like a morning and brunch. In a lot of sense, I feel like this is more kind of Target, Starbucks, Panera Bread type commerce, things like that, just of the relative pitch. Something great for 10 o'clock a.m., noon, 11 o'clock a.m., some of those type pitches, 1 o'clock p.m., some of those particular type times, just in terms of like the morning and kind of brunch type day fare as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. It's just an interesting concept because for the most part, R&B was kind of in like a dry period as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. I mean, Trey Songz had kind of phased out a bit. Some folks like that, Usher had kind of taken somewhat of a break. There just weren't as many dominant R&B type singers. I mean, this is kind of seen as like a pop album, but I kind of see it more this the sultriness and like the rosiness of the singing kind of leads me to believe it's more of like an R&B type record. Just has more of like a more kind of romantic type pitch about it. That this is kind of in a makeshift type sense as far as that kind of goes with it. As far as that particular pitch kind of goes with it, I'd have to say. So it's a good concept. It's a pretty revolutionary album, I'd have to say. It just has the concept of being popular in like the streaming age as far as that particularly kind of goes. This Spotify type music has some streaming numbers on here. Definitely, this album has more than 3 or 4 songs that have over 300 million plays. That was a pretty big deal. Definitely, it's a popular album. Definitely has the pitch of being able to do that. It's just kind of the concept that when you purchase this album, if you get the regular edition, just have to understand there's not a ton of turn up songs. I mean, there's some hangout type ones on here, some good kind of after hours of streaming kind of after effects for like some streaming kind of After Effects for kickback, and then of course some makeshift type numbers for car traverse and things like that. But it just doesn't have like the sheer, like, definitely a good song that was on like the second album by Charlie Puth was Attention. That was an excellent song. Definitely enjoyed that one. That's just a real kind of good dance, snap, and bounce. But there's just no song like that on here on the regular edition. So I'd have to say it's still a good concert. Like I said, a revolutionary project. Definitely a notable, extremely notable R&B project from past the streaming years, past 2015, 2016, as far as that particularly kind of goes. So we'll go ahead and talk about the singles here. Basically, the first single is Marvin Gaye, and I'd have to say this is basically like a poppy kind of upbeat brush for like standard brunch commute. I'd have to suppose pretty good concept to kind of get that one in particular. This has an affable kind of blue collar and errands gem. This is definitely like an affable blue collar and errands gem, I'd have to say, and it's a pretty lively song. So I like the concept of this particular type song. It just has some good kind of poppy. It's just a good upbeat type tune to kind of have like some standard brunch commerce. Just would have to say, just within the concept of once again like 10 a.m., 11 a.m., something like that. Just kind of picking up some snacks or picking up some brunch, picking up some breakfast, some stuff like that. Going to IHOP, some of those type pitches. Just standard kind of easy, just easy. This easy kind of morning groove. This definitely reminds me of like a doo-wop type song, which is the sort of stuff that Meghan Trainor was kind of trying to bring back in 2015, 2014, as far as that particularly kind of goes. Pretty good concept to get her on this particular song. I have to check out some of her music again. I remember checking out some of Meghan Trainor's stuff back in 2014, 2015, as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. But this is a pretty highlighted one. But the thing about this particular song is it's not really like turn up type music. I definitely would have to say this. But something to note about this particular song is it's not really turn up at all. I'd have to say this is definitely more of like SFW kind of morning and brunch type commerce. I would definitely have to feel like there's something for like the standard car commerce of just getting to work and things like that, just kind of checking in, those type things, a standard day commute and daily living, as far as that pitch kind of has with it. Just a good concept, definitely pretty similar to All About That Bass by Meghan Trainor, some of those type ones that were popular in like the mid 2010s, just as far as that pitch kind of goes. Just an affable kind of R&B type one, just in a more kind of, just kind of in a more basic kind of blue collar type sense. I'd have to say pretty good concept for that. One Call Away is another highlighted one. This one definitely reminds me of Justin Bieber, some of the stuff he was doing off of his Purpose album from 2015. I'd have to say this is pretty good morning / evening makeshift malaise. I'd have to say this is like an endearing kind of commute stretcher, I would definitely feel like, and this is just an earworm. And this song is just an earworm kind of radio jingle, I'd have to say. So it's a dope concept to get this one in particular. But this is another kind of sobering type one, I'd have to say. Just a little bit more malaise type one. Definitely works for like some kind of evening type pitches or morning type pitches. Just kind of sunset, sunrise type pitches as far as that particular kind of goes. Just the concept. This one's another kind of endearing. This one's another kind of workaday, kind of homely type one that just works for like a good 1-2 punch with Marvin Gaye as far as that particularly kind of goes. Just some good kind of workaday, kind of just standard wind down type music for just after hours of just got done with work or class, something, some of those type pitches as far as that particularly kind of goes. It's a good kind of stretcher just within that particular kind of field, just within that particular kind of field, just within that particular kind of field as far as that kind of goes and such. So I have to say it's another nice one. But once again, they don't, some of these songs just don't really have that dance bounce. But I still think these are some pretty dope ones. All three of these 3 out of 4 of these singles were like top 20 singles on the Billboard 100. So these were a big deal back in 2015, 2016 as these started to chart. The first 3 singles were all top 20 type hits. So all of these got over 300, 400 million plays on Spotify as far as that pitch kind of particularly happened with it. These were all a big deal back in the mid 2010s as far as that pitch kind of went. So this is once again like a seminal kind of R&B album. Just these were made a lot of noise, were all over the radio, stuff like that, standard rhythmic and kind of pop radio, R&B type radio, stuff like that as far as that particularly went. So these were a big deal. Definitely a pretty social album, I'd have to say. Definitely good for some morning and kind of regular kind of day. Definitely good for some morning brunch and regular day type commerce, I'd have to say. So it's a good concept. We Don't Talk Anymore is the 3rd single, and this has Selena Gomez on there. It's a pretty highlighted one, I'd have to say. Definitely like the kind of summery tropical pitch of this particular one. It's like some good evening mulling. I would definitely say this song is some good evening mulling things over type pitch, I'd have to suppose about that particular one. It's just the deciding activities for the night type. The song is just the deciding activities for the night type tune, I'd have to say, and this is just a good mid-social brush and a pretty good dance hit. So this is probably one of the liveliest songs on like the standard edition, I'd have to say. Definitely has some good pep about it. Selena Gomez does a pretty great job on this particular song. She keeps up with Charlie Puth on this particular song as far as that kind of goes. Definitely some good social brush just within the aspect of kind of some outing type sense, but this is not a full-blown kind of dance smash. I'd have to say it has some good affability about it. Definitely a good spark of one to kind of have it like a shindig, something like that, but it's not like the life of the party kind of party thriller. It's not to say it's not a good song. It's just kind of the concept. It's just kind of a little bit more of like Yeah, this song is just a good mid-social brush. I'd have to say the concept about this particular song is this is just a highlighted one, definitely a good one to kind of have it like a social shindig, something like that for like some outings and overall sense of and this overall sense of night where like there would be dancing, this overall festivities, drinks in hand, or there'd be overall festivities, drinks in hand, some pitches like that as far as the affably kind of goes. Just a good kind of consensus for some night fare, I'd have to suppose, but it's just not like the immediate kind of craziest song on in like a particular kind of dance package for mid 2010s that has supposed is a good highlight, definitely a good one that you want to have around, and a good loud pack for some of that particular concept. But it's not like the it's just the fact that even for Charlie Puth, there's crazier songs to kind of have for that sort of pitch. I'd have to say Attention is definitely more of like an attention grabber, I'd have to say. And there's also some other ones that he's done, I'd have to suppose. Like there's another one like Done For Me is another highlighted one that kind of has that pitch off of his 2018 album. But this is still probably the best song on the standard edition of the album. I'd have to say this is just the immediate kind of highlight. This song has over 1 billion plays on Spotify, so this is definitely a pretty good gem out of 2016. It's kind of been said that 2016 is kind of here and there in terms of like the impact, especially out of R&B, but this is definitely pretty highlight. This is probably one of the best songs out of 2016, I'd have to suppose. This is a real excellent type one, I'd have to say. Real excellent kind of social pep and this mid-social brush that this song particularly kind of has. And this is kind of like a good mild dance hit, so that's a pretty nice one. Dangerously is the fourth single, and this is kind of one that was kind of like the last this one was kind of here and there. This one didn't chart like the first three singles, but it was still a pretty highlighted one to kind of get. This still has over 300 million plays on Spotify, or at least 70 million plays, something like that on Spotify, as far as that kind of particularly kind of goes. This song is kind of a sobering, out on the town, realistic bustle of a song. I'd have to say this is some good makeshift R&B. I would definitely feel like, and this is just a city traverse late day fare, I'd have to suppose. So it's a pretty dope concept to get this one in particular. This one definitely is pretty similar to One Call Away, has that same type of pitch, just a little bit more of like a standard kind of day type fare to something in like an evening sense, I would have to suppose. It's a good concept to kind of get some of these. It's another one that's just great for like some car traverse and just stuff like that. But I would have to suppose that this is just kind of a song for stepping to it and getting out and about and kind of getting tasks done, getting errands done, getting the bills paid and stuff like that. Just a good standard type fare to kind of have some pep in your step and things like that, just for getting things taken care of and just kind of a more bustle that's just not quite as much of lounging and not necessarily laziness, but just has just a little bit more emotion, just has more realistic kind of bustle, just kind of the brush of just being out in the standard kind of commute and stuff like that, and like daily living type fare as far as that pitch kind of goes. Just a kind of a sobering song. It's not like a dramatic kind of one that's just life changing, but this is kind of the concept of just being able to say that it is a sobering type feeling for just being like, hey, let's get to it. Some of those type pitches. Definitely like the concept of this particular song, and it's in an R&B sense. So that's a pretty good concept to kind of have that particular song. So I do appreciate that one. But yeah, this particular album, like the standard edition of this album has 12 songs, and out of those 12 songs, I wound up recommending to you 7. So I'd have to say I'll go ahead and talk about some of those. And the deluxe edition has 3 additional songs, and out of those 15, I wound up recommending to you 10. So definitely, I recommend all 3 of the bonus songs on the deluxe edition. So I would have to say it's just easier to. I would have to say I just highly recommend picking up the deluxe. All 3 of those songs rock and kick ass as far as that pitch kind of particularly happens with it. The standard edition is a little bit more of like less of like kind of investment. I'd have to suppose, not to say like it's a horrid type project, but it's just kind of concept. It's just more haphazard, I'd have to say. So I'll go ahead and recommend the 10 songs on including. I'll go ahead and recommend the 10 songs including the deluxe songs I recommend. So the 10 songs I recommend would be Marvin Gaye, One Call Away, We Don't Talk Anymore, Suffer, Dangerously, Then There's You, Nothing But Trouble, Does It Feel, Losing My Mind, and River. So basically, Does It Feel, Nothing But Trouble, and River are the 3 songs on the deluxe edition. These are all highlighted ones I would definitely have to suppose. But talk about some of these songs on here. Basically, to kick things off with the deluxe edition, I'd have to say River is basically like a brooding kind of social after hours haze of a song. I would definitely feel like this is just a good affable kind of smoky feel this song kind of particularly kind of has. It's an out on the town. It's definitely an out on the town song and like a sultry kind of pitch, I'd have to suppose. So this is a pretty nice one. This is the sort of song that Adele kind of does and folks like that. Just some of that type pitch. It's a good concept to kind of get some of this kind of particular smokiness. Some of the stuff that Justin Bieber is known for on some of his acoustic albums and stuff like that. Just a real brooding type song. Just more of like a rosy type feel. Just a little bit more of like a wintry type brush, I'd have to suppose. Pretty good concept to get that one in particular. Once again, it's just kind of, it's a mid-tempo type song, I'd have to suppose, but it's just kind of concept that it's just kind of more a defensive type song, I'd have to suppose. This is not quite as carnivorous. Like this album is really not that carnivorous. It's just kind of more like this is very much more of like a passive aggressive kind of album, I'd have to say. It's just kind of the concept. It just doesn't have like the full blown aggression of like some nightclub type haze and stuff like that and dance type moments. I mean, there are some on here. The deluxe edition that came out months later did have some of these particular type songs, I'd have to say, which I look after it like Does It Feel and Nothing But Trouble are both songs that kind of had that particular pitch in mind. But it's just kind of the concept of the standard edition is basically a sleeper of a project. I mean, it's revolutionary enough and it did a lot of damage for the 2010s. It's just kind of the concept that you're just going to realize if you're looking for something for like a Friday, Thursday night, some type of pitch where you want to go out for drinks or dances and stuff like that and just really have some high octane type energy. It just doesn't really have that, but it does on the 2018 albums. I'd recommend getting that one as well. But just to talk about some of these also, like Nothing But Trouble's on the deluxe edition also, so this is a highlighted one. This is like a necessary kind of dance snap and groove this song particularly kind of has. This is definitely some social sparkle, I'd have to say, and it's pretty similar to We Don't Talk and this song is pretty similar to We Don't Talk Anymore off the standard edition. This is definitely a great icebreaker. So this is the kind of song they're needed. This probably should have been on the standard edition. I think this just would have really bolstered the score for that particular project a whole bunch more. It really kicks into overdrive and like the chorus and like the second verse as far as that particular kind of happens. But this is just overall an excellent song. The whole particular song just rocks. The whole particular song just rocks completely, I'd have to suppose. It's a pretty necessary type one. Definitely feel like this is probably one of the most, you definitely like the deluxe edition is just like the deluxe edition is just completely necessary to get. And I think it's pretty much, it's not that big of a deal now that it's been 8 years. So I just would go ahead and get that one. Does It Feel is another highlight off the deluxe edition. I would definitely have to say it's like a bleary kind of dancing kickback rumbler. I would definitely feel like it keeps an interesting pace, I would have to suppose, and it's a pretty affable, regular, fair downtime of a song, I'd have to say. Just a good concept, good hangout type tune to kind of have. This is definitely like some streaming type tunes as far as that pitch kind of has with it. Another one that's pretty similar to that is there are some basic kind of streaming type numbers like Then There's You and some of those type ones. I want to say that there's like another one on here. I'd say maybe Nothing But Trouble is one of those type ones, but for the most part, and I would definitely say that We Don't Talk Anymore is another highlighted one like that. Definitely some good streaming type numbers for Spotify haze and just stuff like that. Some of those type pitches for some R&B kickback with the ladies as far as that particular kind of goes. Just would have to say some good boo-booed up and kind of kickback type fare as far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of goes. Just some good concepts for that. Just Does It Feel is just a good highlighted one. This is another, that's just basically another one that has some dance snap on there. I do feel like some of these dance songs I do definitely feel like some of these dance songs are completely necessary, I'd have to suppose. Another one that's kind of similar to that kind of has like a good pitch that's on the standard edition but does have some particular good pitch about it, and just in like a more kind of upbeat kind of sense would be Then There's You. This is basically like a romantic kind of mid-pace R&B group, I'd have to say. This is some good background music and streaming gem type music to kind of have just within that pretty rock solid sense, I'd have to say. And this is just a great basic kickback type song. So some of these, like I was saying, I would definitely pair up Then There's You with We Don't Talk Anymore, Does It Feel, Nothing But Trouble, some of those type ones. A little bit of Marvin Gaye depending upon the rosiness and just the overall kind of more vanilla type feels of some of that particular pitch as far as that kind of goes. Some of these, there's just more urban type ones on here, more rhythmic type ones that just hit a little bit heavier, just have a little bit more bounce towards them. I definitely feel like the deluxe edition nails that extremely well. I'd have to say all three of those songs really have that kind of more rhythmic type sense for just a little bit more contemporary spark as far as that kind of particularly kind of goes. But I would definitely say that Then There's You and We Don't Talk Anymore are two lively ones off the standard edition. I would definitely say that Suffer's a pretty highlighted one. This is like a classic kind of city. This is like a classic kind of city commerce, I would have to say. Definitely pretty nice one for that particular pitch. This is like a good regular day kind of outing ladies gym. I would definitely feel like this is a good kind of, and this is definitely a good loud pack for some regular 2010s type R&B, I would have to say. So it's a dope concept to get this one in particular. This has some good city bustle about it. Just a real classy type one. This has a good lot. Just a real classy type one. This has some good graceful commerce about it just within that particular sense. It's kind of out on the town like a more kind of city hopping, kind of more urban type sense. Just some great 2010 city hopping just in a contemporary type sense that has, so it's a pretty nice one. This definitely, I would say, almost works in like the wintertime. This is definitely pretty good commerce for just for like that makeshift. Doesn't have to just be car commerce. It doesn't just have to be car commerce and makeshift as far as that pitch kind of happens with it, but it's definitely some good day fare as far as that pitch kind of goes with it. So this is just some good stuff on, so this is just some great stuff on here. Pretty dope concept as far as that pitch kind of particularly goes along with it. Definitely a revolutionary album for like the mid 2010s as far as that particularly kind of went. Definitely a page turner in a streaming not, I would almost say a streaming classic, but pretty close to it. This definitely has more than a few type hits, especially on the deluxe edition. I'd have to suppose there's definitely some winners on here. There's some after hours kind of kickback and things like that. Just some decent kind of dance snap and just some great makeshift, I'd have to suppose. So talk about the 5 songs I didn't recommend on here, which basically there's a ton of ballads on here and just some more homely type feels. I feel like a lot of this is just kind of boyfriend music in a more poor type sense that just doesn't have the affability and quite as liveliness as it needs to. I feel like some songs like My Gospel, Up All Night, I feel like some songs like My Gospel, Up All Night, Left, Right, Left, As You Are, and Some Type of Love are just kind of more homely type ones and just more standard brush and bristle just within the pitch of like some kind of standard day-to-day type, regular living type fare that just doesn't have the most affable kind of that just doesn't have the most affable and compelling type nature about them. These are just more kind of standard type ones. The productions on these are just pretty poor. They're just kind of more standard piano and just kind of typical kind of just minimalist type productions that don't really jump off the page and really have some spark. I definitely feel like, I would definitely have to say Charlie Puth got better in 2018. I mean, this is a dope album. This is going to get a pretty good score, but I would have to say some of the singles off of like Voice Notes were just heavier hitting. I'd have to say songs like Done For Me and Attention and some of those type ones, but just this album desperately needed a song like We Don't Talk Anymore Again or a song like Attention, some of those type ones I would definitely have to say, but it's just a concept that just is sorely lacking some of these homely type ones, especially on like a short kind of 12-song album. There's just too many more down tempo and homely type songs I'd have to suppose, but I would have to say just so to score this particular album, I'm going to go ahead and give the standard edition of this album me recommending 7 songs out of 12 on the standard edition. I'm going to go ahead and give the standard edition of this album like a 6.75 out of 10. That's pretty standard enough, just above average, but not wholesomely so, I'd have to say. But the deluxe edition, where I wound up recommending 10 songs out of 15, the deluxe edition where I recommend 10 songs out of 15, I'm going to go ahead and score that particular album like an 8.5 out of 10. I mean, that really bolstered the score quite a bit. Just those three extra songs just made all the more of a difference, I'd have to suppose, because the standard edition was lacking in more ways than it probably should have. Because the standard edition was kind of lacking somewhat in more ways than it probably should have, I'd have to suppose. But 8.5 out of 10 on the deluxe, I definitely have to say. It's just an easier pick to kind of pick that one up. Has more dance snap on there. Just has more social and streaming type numbers to kind of hang out and have some kickback with and things like that. Just some overall affability. Definitely the makeshift haze is pretty good on here. Just some good commerce and loud pack for like 2010s type fare. It's a pretty notable 2010s R&B type album, I'd have to say. The singles are all pretty much a big deal. All of these, he snagged Megan Trainor and Selena Gomez off his first album, so it's a pretty dope concept. Get those in particular. These are definitely some notable ones. They're earworm type ones. They're earworm type ones, and they definitely fit like a casual market where people are going to know these particular songs if they're notable, if they remember like 2010s radio from 8-9 years ago, as far as that pitch kind of particularly happens with this. That's definitely a pretty good thing. 8.5 social, 8.5 deluxe, 6.75 regular score. The social score I'm going to go ahead and give like an 8.75 to, because I feel like there's definitely some notable songs in here. Has enough of a good snap about it. Definitely some good makeshift type songs. Few decent dance songs. Definitely has some good makeshift type songs. Has a few good streaming type songs. I would definitely feel like pretty much like a pretty big deal in streaming services, I would have to suppose. A lot of good notable ones in that particular type pitch. A few dance numbers in like the deluxe edition, some stuff like that. Just some noteworthy type stuff that just sounds contemporary, especially to like the mid 2010s as far as that pitch kind of happens. Just some loud pack for like standard kind of daily living as far as that pitch kind of would particularly go with it. And it doesn't really show its age either. I feel like some of these are still notable enough to kind of be popular despite the fact that this album's over 8 years old, I'd have to say. So I would almost give it like a 9 social, but it's just kind of the concept that it just doesn't have like a dance hit kind of smash apart from We Don't Talk Anymore. That's the biggest song off this particular album, and it was a huge deal at the time. It was just kind of the concept that it just needed, if it would have had a song like Attention on this particular album or something like that, or Done For Me, one of those type ones, I would have said I probably would have almost given this project like a 10 out of 10 social. It's just really good. Definitely has some notable ones that were a big deal. It's just kind of the concept that they're just not all like, none of the singles minus We Don't Talk Anymore really kind of like have dance snap about them and more social kind of outing type fare for like weekends as far as that pitch kind of happens. So it's just a different kind of pitch just for like makeshift type fare. That's kind of the concept about it. But I would have to say, in terms of the future, like Charlie Puth dropped an album in 2022. So he took a break after his 2018 album. He didn't drop an album in 2020, but he came back 6 years later after, or he came back 4 years later after his 2018 album, put out an album in 2022. So there are a few more of these I'm going to have to get to, and he does have some EPs also. I'm definitely going to review Voice Notes from 2018 and eventually get to his 2022 album. But this is definitely some good stuff here. It's just kind of off. It's a little bit of like an abstract type one in terms of like the standard format for what R&B probably should have in like a full-blown sense. But it's definitely a winner. It's a revolutionary type one. It's a seminal R&B album from the 2010s. I definitely have to say it's a pretty good streaming highlight. Has some great singles on here. Just the only main complaint about it it's just it lacks like a huge kind of dance hit kind of smash, I'd have to say. So that's pretty dope concept about that. Definitely recommend the deluxe edition.